Have you ever been paralyzed by grace? It's an unusual phrase, I know, and a strange question. The phrase, paralyzed by grace, was developed by Richard Foster, and here's what he was trying to communicate. When we reduce the grace of God to mean merely and only the forgiveness of God for our sins, we position ourselves to be in an unending cycle of sin and forgiveness, sin and forgiveness. Very subtly, if we reduce the grace of God to mean only forgiveness, our identity begins to change. We begin to say, I'm a miserable sinner, like the old song says. And God, well, He forgives me every time I sin. And then it becomes a role. I sin, He forgives. I sin, He forgives. Or more bluntly, I'll do my job, God. You do yours. This is what Dallas Willard calls miserable sinner theology. Now, it's true that we sin, and it's true that God forgives. But what if the grace of God were so much greater? What if the grace of God empowered us to follow Jesus? This is exactly what the Apostle Paul writes to Titus in chapter 2 of that epistle. In Titus 2, verses 11 and 12, the Apostle Paul says, "But the grace of God, which brings salvation to all men, has appeared, teaching us to deny ungodliness and to live sensible and upright lives in this present age." Well, this is a revelation, because the grace of God does bring salvation to everyone. But here we see the grace of God also teaching us how to say no to ungodliness and how to live sensible and upright lives in this present age. That's a very different thing than forgiveness. What if grace is empowerment to follow Jesus? What if grace is the fuel that we need to be transformed to the image of Christ? And I believe that's exactly God's intent in extending us this lavish and wonderful grace. And that is that as we pursue the spiritual disciplines that every disciple should pursue, we don't encounter transformation because we are trying harder. We encounter transformation because the grace of God empowers these efforts. Apart from the grace of God, we will not be transformed into His image. But with the grace of God, mixed into the disciplines that every disciple embraces, we find ourselves being changed.